Sitting in that courtroom, watching my own parents try to steal the house I bought with my own hard-earned money, I couldn't help but think about how we got here. They called me selfish for not giving it to their precious golden daughter. But they had no idea that in the briefcase I was holding there was a document that would make them fall to their knees and beg for forgiveness. Hi everyone, I'm Madison. Today's story might make you angry, but please stick around until the end because the conclusion will show you that justice really does exist. If you've ever felt like your family treated you unfairly, make sure to subscribe to this channel so you don't miss similar stories. I promise you'll get incredible value by the end of this story. Let me take you back to where it all began. I was born 3 years after my sister Sophia. But somehow I always felt like the extra child. Sophia was what my parents called their golden daughter. She got expensive toys, family vacations, and private school tuition. Meanwhile, I wore hand-me-downs, learned to cook for myself at 12, and started working part-time jobs at 16 just to have spending money. I remember one Christmas morning when I was 8 years old. Sophia unwrapped a brand new American Girl doll, complete with accessories and outfits that probably cost $300. My gift was a colouring book from the dollar store. When I asked why Santa brought Sophia such expensive gifts, my mother said, "Because she's been a better girl this year, Madison. Maybe next year you'll learn to be more grateful." That word, grateful. It became the soundtrack of my childhood. I should be grateful for the roof over my head, grateful for food on the table, grateful that they even bothered to raise me. But never once did they acknowledge that I helped put food on that table with my part-time job at the local diner, or that I cleaned every corner of that house while Sophia got to focus on her cheerleading practice. When I was 16, I worked 30 hours a week at the diner while maintaining a 4.0 GPA. Sophia, on the other hand, barely scraped by with C's and D's. But my parents hired expensive tutors for her. When I asked if I could get help with my calculus class, my father said, "You're smart enough to figure it out yourself. Besides, we can't afford tutors for both of you." The night I found out I got a full scholarship to MIT was supposed to be one of the happiest moments of my life. I ran home, practically bursting with excitement, ready to share the news with my family. I found them in the living room watching TV. "Mum, Dad, guess what? I got into MIT with a full ride." My mother barely looked up from her show. "Well, that's the least you could do," she said. "It's about time all that studying paid off." My father nodded in agreement. "Yeah, Madison. This is what we expected from you. Now, maybe you can help us pay for Sophia's college applications. She's applying to some really good schools." That night, lying in my twin bed in the basement, Sophia had the master bedroom upstairs because she needed more space for her things. I realized something that would shape the rest of my relationship with my family. I wasn't their daughter. I was their investment, their backup plan, their insurance policy. College was supposed to be my escape, but even 3,000 miles away at MIT, I couldn't escape their expectations. Every phone call was the same script. How were my grades? Was I maintaining my scholarship? When would I graduate and start making real money? Never once did they ask if I was happy, if I'd made friends, or if I was adjusting to life away from home. Meanwhile, Sophia struggled through community college. She changed majors 4 times, dropped out twice, and each time my parents called me with the same request, "Madison, your sister needs help. Can you send some money?" When I suggested that maybe Sophia should get a job like I did, my mother's voice turned ice cold. "Not everyone is as selfish as you, Madison. Some people understand what family means." That word again, family. But what kind of family was this? During my junior year at MIT, Sophia failed out of community college for the second time. Instead of dealing with the consequences, my parents decided it was somehow my fault. "If you had been a better sister," my father said during one of our monthly phone calls, "if you had helped her with her studies instead of being so focused on yourself, maybe she wouldn't be struggling." I was taking 18 credit hours, working as a research assistant, and sending home $200 a month that I earned from tutoring other students. But somehow, I wasn't doing enough. The breaking point came during my senior year. I was 21 years old, weeks away from graduating with a degree in software engineering and multiple job offers from tech companies in Seattle. I was finally going to be financially independent, finally going to build the life I'd dreamed of. That's when my parents called with their biggest ask yet. "Madison," my mother's voice was saccharine sweet, which I'd learned meant she wanted something big. "Your father and I have been talking. You know how much we've sacrificed for your education." Here we go, I thought. The Guilt Trip Express was pulling into the station. "We think it would be appropriate for you to transfer your scholarship money to Sophia. She wants to try college again, but this time at a private school. The tuition is $40,000 a year, but with your scholarship money, we could make it work." I sat in my tiny dorm room, phone pressed to my ear, wondering if I'd heard correctly. "Mum, I can't transfer my scholarship. It doesn't work that way. And besides, I earned this scholarship. It's merit-based." "Don't be ridiculous, Madison. Family comes first. You're smart enough to figure out how to pay for school yourself. Take out loans like everyone else. Sophia needs this opportunity more than you do." "But Mum, I graduate in 3 months. The scholarship money has already been applied to my tuition. I literally cannot transfer it to Sophia." My father grabbed the phone. His voice was harder than I'd ever heard it. "Madison, listen to me very carefully. You will find a way to make this happen for your sister, or you are no longer our daughter. Do you understand me?" The line went dead. For 3 days I heard nothing from them. Then my mother called back, her voice cold and final. "Madison, your father and I have made a decision. Since you've made it clear that you don't consider yourself part of this family, we won't be treating you as such anymore. Don't bother coming home for graduation. Don't bother coming home for holidays. You've chosen yourself over your family, and now you can live with that choice." That was the last real conversation I had with my parents until I was 28 years old. I graduated MIT with highest honours, got hired by a tech company in Seattle, and slowly built the life I'd always wanted. I bought a small apartment, then eventually saved enough for a down payment on a house. It wasn't a mansion, but it was mine. Every mortgage payment, every piece of furniture, every improvement, all of it earned with my own 2 hands. For 7 years, the only contact I had with my family was when they needed money. Car repairs, medical bills, Sophia's various emergencies. Somehow, these crises always found their way to my voicemail. And like an idiot, I usually helped. Not because I felt obligated, but because I kept hoping that maybe this time they'd acknowledge what I was doing for them. Maybe this time they'd remember I was their daughter too. Sophia bounced from job to job, relationship to relationship, always landing on her feet because my parents provided a safety net she took for granted. She'd moved back home after her second college attempt failed. And from what I gathered from our rare conversations, she was content to let Mom and Dad take care of everything while she figured out what she wanted to do with her life. I wasn't invited to family gatherings. Christmas cards were addressed to the Johnson family with no mention of me. When my grandmother died, I found out from Facebook. When my cousin got married, I saw the pictures online. I had become a ghost in my own family's story, visible only when they needed financial help. But I told myself I was okay with it. I had a good job, a nice house, and a peaceful life. I didn't need their drama or their conditional love. I'd learned to be self-sufficient, and there was something liberating about not having to live up to anyone else's expectations. That fragile peace lasted until last spring, when Sophia called me directly for the first time in 3 years. "Madison?" Her voice sounded different, older maybe. "It's Sophia." "Hey," I said, immediately on guard. "What's going on? Is everything okay?" "I'm pregnant." I sat down heavily in my kitchen chair, looking out at the garden I'd spent weekends cultivating. "Congratulations. I guess. How far along are you?" 4 months. The baby's dad, well, he's not really in the picture anymore. It's complicated. Of course it was. Are you okay financially? Do you need help with medical bills or anything? Actually, that's kind of why I'm calling. Mum and Dad have been amazing, but I'm going to need a place to live when the baby comes. Somewhere stable, you know? Somewhere I can really build a life. Something in her tone made my stomach clench. Okay, are you looking at apartments? I could help with a security deposit if you find something reasonable. Well, that's the thing. Mum and Dad had this idea, and it actually makes a lot of sense when you think about it. I closed my eyes, already knowing I wasn't going to like whatever came next. They think I should move into your house. The words hung in the air like smoke. I'm sorry, what? Your house, Madison. You have that big place in Seattle, and you're just one person. I'm going to be a single mum. I need the space more than you do. I felt like someone had punched me in the chest. Sophia, I live in my house. I bought it. I pay the mortgage. I know that, but family helps family, right? This baby's going to be Mum and Dad's first grandchild. Don't you want what's best for your nephew or niece? Of course I do, but that doesn't mean I'm going to give you my house. That's insane. If you need a place to live, I can help you find an apartment, maybe help with rent for a few months until you get settled. Madison, I can't afford Seattle rent on my own. And Mom and Dad can't keep supporting me forever. This is the perfect solution. You could find a nice apartment somewhere, and I could raise my baby in a real home with a yard and good schools. I was quiet for a long moment, trying to process what she was asking. Sophia, do you hear yourself right now? You're asking me to give up my home, so you can have it instead. That's not how life works. God, Madison, you sound just like Mum said you would, selfish and bitter. Selfish? The word came out louder than I intended. I'm selfish for wanting to keep the house I bought with my own money. You know what? Forget it. I should have known you wouldn't help your own family. I'll figure something else out. She hung up before I could respond. For the next week, my phone rang constantly. Mom, Dad, sometimes both of them, on speakerphone, tag-teaming me with guilt and manipulation tactics that would have made a used car salesman proud. Madison, this is your chance to finally do something meaningful for your family. Your sister needs you, and you're turning your back on her just like you always do. When we're gone, Sophia is all you'll have left. Do you really want to destroy that relationship over a house? But the conversation that changed everything happened on a Tuesday evening in March. I'd just gotten home from work when my phone rang. Both parents on speaker, their voices united in a way they'd never been when it came to supporting me. Madison, we need to settle this tonight, my father said. Sophia is 5 months pregnant now. She needs to know where she's going to live. I already told her I'd help her find an apartment and cover some of the costs until she gets on her feet. That's not good enough, my mother interjected. She needs stability. She needs a house with a yard where she can raise our grandchild properly. Then maybe you should buy her one. The silence that followed was deafening. Madison Elizabeth Chen, my father's voice was deadly quiet. You will give your sister that house, or you are no longer our daughter. And this time, we mean it permanently. You already said that once, Dad. Remember, when I wouldn't transfer my scholarship money, how'd that work out for you? This is different, my mother said. Yeah, this is about an innocent baby who deserves a good start in life, but you're too selfish to see past your own petty wants. Something inside me snapped. 7 years of silence, 7 years of being the family ATM, 7 years of watching them lavish love and support on Sophia while treating me like an obligation. I was done. You want to know what's selfish? I said, my voice steady and calm. As selfish as having a daughter who worked 3 jobs in high school to help pay family bills and never once saying thank you. Selfish is taking credit for that daughter's academic achievements while giving her 0 support. Selfish is cutting that daughter out of your lives because she wouldn't bankrupt herself for her sister's education, then only calling when you need money. And selfish is demanding that same daughter give up her home, to fix problems you created by enabling her sister for 25 years. How dare you speak to us that way, my mother hissed, after everything we've done for you? What exactly have you done for me, Mom? Name one thing, one single thing you've done for me that you didn't also do for Sophia, except better. Silence. That's what I thought. The answer is nothing. You've done nothing for me that wasn't the bare legal minimum required to avoid child neglect charges. Madison, my father's voice was shaking with rage, you have 48 hours to deed that house to your sister, or we're going to take legal action. I actually laughed. Legal action? For what? For not giving away my private property to my unemployed sister? For being an ungrateful, selfish daughter who refuses to help her family in their time of need? Good luck with that, Dad. I'll be sure to save all these voicemails for my lawyer. I hung up and immediately blocked both their numbers. For 3 months, I heard nothing. It was the most peaceful 3 months I'd had in years. I worked on my garden, took a pottery class, started dating a guy from work. For the first time since I was 8 years old, I felt like I could breathe without someone telling me I wasn't breathing correctly. Then the letter arrived. It was from a law firm I'd never heard of, thick cream-coloured paper with official letterhead that was clearly designed to intimidate. Notice of legal action was stamped in red across the top. My hands were shaking as I read it. My parents were actually suing me. They were claiming that I had a legal and moral obligation to provide housing for my pregnant sister, and that my refusal to do so constituted elder abuse, family abandonment, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. I read the document 3 times before the absurdity of it fully sank in. They were actually trying to legally force me to give Sophia my house. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about that 8-year-old girl with the dollar store colouring book, watching her sister unwrap hundreds of dollars worth of presents. I thought about working 30 hours a week in high school while Sophia got tutors. I thought about 7 years of silence broken only by requests for money. And I thought about that house, my house, the first place I'd ever lived that was truly mine. Every room painted in colours I chose, every piece of furniture earned with my own paychecks, every mortgage payment made on time despite no help from anyone. They wanted to take that away from me and give it to someone who had never worked for anything in her life. For the first time in 28 years, I decided I wasn't going to stay silent. The next morning, I called the best family lawyer in Seattle. Jennifer Walsh had a reputation for being brilliant, ruthless, and completely unimpressed by emotional manipulation tactics. If anyone could help me navigate this insanity, it would be her. Ms. Chen, Jennifer's voice was crisp and professional when I explained the situation. I have to tell you, this is one of the most frivolous lawsuits I've seen in 15 years of practice. No court in America would force an adult child to give their private property to a sibling. Your parents either have terrible legal advice or they're hoping to intimidate you into settling. So what do? We fight it, and we make sure they understand that filing frivolous lawsuits has consequences. That afternoon, I met Jennifer at her downtown office. She was exactly what I'd expected. Sharp suit, no-nonsense attitude, and a legal mind that could cut through family drama like a hot knife through butter. "Tell me everything," she said, pulling out a legal pad. "Start from the beginning. I want to understand the full history of your relationship with your parents." For 2 hours, I told her everything. The differential treatment, the financial expectations, the years of silence, the constant guilt trips. Jennifer took notes and asked pointed questions that made me realize just how dysfunctional my family dynamic really was. "Madison," she said when I finished, "what you're describing isn't just favoritism. It's psychological abuse. You were the family scapegoat, used as an emotional dumping ground and a source of financial support, while your sister was elevated to golden child status." Hearing someone else say it out loud made something click into place. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't selfish. I was a daughter who had been treated like an employee by her own parents. "Now let's talk about your case," Jennifer continued. "They don't have a legal leg to stand on, but that doesn't mean we can't use this situation to your advantage. I'm going to need you to gather some documents for me." "What kind of documents?" "Bank statements showing any money you've sent them over the years. Records of the house purchase showing you bought it entirely on your own. Phone records, if you have them." And she paused, studying her notes. I want you to contact the probate court in your hometown. I want to see if your grandparents left any kind of inheritance that might have been mishandled. My grandparents? I hadn't thought about them in years. They died when I was in high school. Grandma first, then Grandpa about a year later. I remembered them being disappointed that I couldn't come to the funerals because of school and work, but my parents had said they understood. Why would you want to check on that? Jennifer's smile was sharp. Because, in my experience, families that are this comfortable financially abusing one child often have no problem misappropriating inheritances as well. It's worth checking. That night, I started gathering the documents Jennifer had requested. Bank statements showed that over the past 10 years, I'd sent my parents nearly $30,000 for various emergencies. Phone records confirmed the harassment leading up to their lawsuit. And the house documents clearly showed that I'd purchased it entirely with my own down payment and qualified for the mortgage based solely on my income and credit score. But it was the call to the probate court that changed everything. Ma'am, the clerk said when I explained what I was looking for, I show a will filed for Martha and Robert Chen in 2009. The estate was valued at approximately $800,000. My heart stopped. 800,000? Yes, ma'am. The primary beneficiary is listed as Madison Chen with a smaller bequest to the second granddaughter. Would you like me to send you a copy of the filed documents? I sat in my kitchen, phone pressed to my ear, trying to process what I'd just heard. My grandparents had left me $800,000. Money that could have paid for my entire college education, could have given me a start in life that most people only dream of. Money I'd never seen. Mom, are you still there? Yes, I managed to say. Yes, please send me everything you have. When I called Jennifer the next morning and told her what I'd discovered, her reaction was immediate and intense. Madison, this changes everything. If your parents received an inheritance meant for you and never told you about it, that's not just morally wrong, it's legally actionable. We're not just defending against their frivolous lawsuit anymore. We're going on the offensive. What does that mean? It means that when we walk into that courtroom, your parents are going to get the shock of their lives. They think they're going to intimidate you into giving up your house. Instead, they're going to find out that they owe you nearly $1 million in inheritance money plus 15 years of accumulated interest. For the first time since this whole nightmare began, I smiled. The court date was set for 6 weeks later. During that time, Jennifer and I built our case methodically. We had bank records, phone transcripts, the inheritance documents, and a paper trail that told the story of 28 years of financial and emotional abuse. My parents, meanwhile, seemed confident that I would cave under pressure. Sophia called me twice from different numbers, crying about how stress was bad for the baby and begging me to just do the right thing. Various relatives reached out on social media, sharing articles about the importance of family and the selfishness of younger generations. But I'd found something I'd never had before, a voice, and I was finally ready to use it. The night before the court date, I sat in my living room, looking around at the life I'd built for myself. Tomorrow everything would change. Tomorrow my parents would learn that their youngest daughter wasn't the pushover they thought she was. Tomorrow the truth would finally come out. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of what my parents would think of me. I was ready to let a judge decide who was really being selfish. The morning of the court date, I woke up at 5 a.m., even though the hearing wasn't until 10. I'd barely slept, running through everything Jennifer and I had prepared. I put on my best navy suit, the one I wore to important client meetings, and looked at myself in the mirror. For the first time in years, I looked like someone who belonged in her own life. Jennifer met me at the courthouse steps. She was carrying 2 thick briefcases and wearing the kind of confident expression that made me believe everything was going to be okay. "Ready for this?" she asked. "More than ready," I said, and I meant it. Walking into that courtroom was surreal. My parents sat at the plaintiff's table with their lawyer, a middle-aged man in an expensive suit who kept checking his phone. They both turned when I entered, and I saw something flicker across my mother's face. Surprise, maybe, like she hadn't expected me to actually show up. Sophia was there too, sitting in the gallery with her hands folded over her now prominent belly. She looked pale and nervous, avoiding eye contact when I glanced her way. Behind her sat my Aunt Carol and Uncle Jim, my mother's sister and brother-in-law, along with a handful of other relatives I barely knew. They were all here to witness what my parents clearly expected to be my public humiliation. What they didn't know was that Jennifer had a few surprises planned. Judge Patricia Morrison called the court to order. She was a woman in her 50s, with silver hair and sharp eyes that suggested she'd seen every kind of family drama imaginable, and had little patience for nonsense. "This is the matter of Johnson versus Chen," she announced. "The plaintiffs are seeking to compel the defendant to provide housing for her pregnant sister. Counsel for the plaintiff, please proceed with your opening statement." My parents' lawyer, Mr. Davidson, stood up and launched into what was clearly a prepared speech about family obligations and moral duties. He painted a picture of Sophia as a vulnerable pregnant woman abandoned by her heartless sister, and me as a selfish daughter who had forgotten the values her parents taught her. "Your Honour," Davidson said, his voice dripping with manufactured emotion, "my clients raised 2 daughters with the understanding that family comes first. The defendant has achieved financial success, while her sister faces the challenges of single motherhood. It is unconscionable that she would allow her pregnant sister to struggle when she has the means to help." I watched my father nod approvingly at everything Davidson said. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, playing the role of the heartbroken mother perfectly. "The plaintiffs are not asking for charity," Davidson continued. "They are asking for basic human decency, for the defendant to remember that she has obligations beyond herself." When he finished, Jennifer stood up. She was calm, professional, and completely unimpressed by the theatrical performance we'd just witnessed. "Your Honour," she began, "this case is not about family obligations. It's about a frivolous lawsuit filed by parents who have spent their daughter's entire life treating her as a source of financial support rather than as a person deserving of love and respect." She gestured toward the documents spread across our table. "The defendant, Madison Chen, purchased her home entirely with her own funds. She qualified for her mortgage based solely on her own income and credit history. The house is her private property, and no court in this country would force an adult to give their private property to a sibling, regardless of circumstances. I could see my parents exchange glances. This wasn't going the way they'd expected. Furthermore, Jennifer continued, we will show that this lawsuit is merely the latest in a decades-long pattern of financial and emotional abuse perpetrated by the plaintiffs against their daughter. Now my father looked angry. He leaned over to whisper something to Davidson, who nodded and made a note on his legal pad. Judge Morrison looked intrigued. Counsel, those are serious allegations. I hope you're prepared to substantiate them. We are, Your Honour. We're prepared to present extensive documentation of this pattern, including bank records showing that Ms. Chen has provided nearly $30,000 in financial support to her parents over the past decade, despite receiving no emotional or financial support from them since she turned 18. The judge raised an eyebrow. Proceed with your case, Mr. Davidson. Davidson called my mother to the stand first. She walked up slowly, still clutching her tissue, and was sworn in. Under Davidson's questioning, she painted herself as a devoted mother who had sacrificed everything for her daughters. Mrs. Johnson, Davidson said, can you tell the court about your relationship with the defendant? Madison has always been a difficult child, my mother said, her voice trembling slightly. Even as a little girl, she was selfish and jealous of her sister. We tried so hard to teach her about family values, about putting others before yourself, but she never seemed to learn. I felt Jennifer's hand briefly touch my arm, a silent reminder to stay calm. And how did you feel when you learned about your daughter, Sophia's pregnancy? We were overjoyed, of course, our first grandchild. But we were also worried because Sophia doesn't have the financial resources that Madison does. When we asked Madison to help by letting Sophia live in her house, we thought surely she would want to help her pregnant sister. And what was her response? My mother's voice hardened. She said no, just like that. No consideration for her sister's needs, no concern for her unborn nephew or niece. It broke our hearts. During cross-examination, Jennifer was surgical in her precision. Mrs. Johnson, you testified that Madison was a difficult child. Can you tell me about her academic achievements in high school? She got good grades. More than good grades, correct? She graduated valedictorian with a 4.0 GPA while working 30 hours per week, isn't that right? My mother shifted uncomfortably. I suppose. And she received a full scholarship to MIT, one of the most prestigious universities in the country? Yes. Did you attend her high school graduation? A long pause. We had other commitments. What about her college graduation from MIT? Another pause. Madison didn't want us there. Jennifer pulled out a transcript. Actually, Mrs. Johnson, we have a recording of a phone conversation where you explicitly told Madison not to come home for graduation and not to expect you to attend. Would you like me to play that for the court? My mother's face flushed red. That's taken out of context. Let's talk about context then. In the 7 years between Madison's college graduation and this lawsuit, how many times did you contact her for reasons other than asking for money? We called her on holidays. According to phone records, you called her exactly 4 times in 7 years for reasons other than financial requests. 4 times. Does that sound like the behaviour of loving parents? Davidson objected, but the damage was done. The judge was looking at my mother with obvious skepticism. My father took the stand next, and his testimony was even worse. Under Jennifer's questioning, he admitted that they had treated Sophia and me differently, but claimed it was because Sophia needed more support. Mr. Johnson, Jennifer said, you testified that Sophia needed more support. Can you explain why a child who received private tutoring, expensive gifts, and full parental financial support into her 20s needed more support than a child who worked multiple jobs starting at age 16? Sophia is more sensitive. Madison was always independent. Independent or forced to be independent because you provided her with no other choice. Madison chose to distance herself from the family. Jennifer pulled out another document. Mr. Johnson, I'm showing you a transcript of a voicemail you left for Madison 3 days ago. In it, you say, quote, "You will give your sister that house, or you are no longer our daughter." Does that sound like Madison chose to distance herself, or like you repeatedly rejected her when she didn't meet your financial demands? My father's jaw tightened. Madison knows what she needs to do. And what exactly does she need to do? Give up her home, which she purchased with her own money, to accommodate your other daughter's life choices? She needs to remember that family comes first. When has family ever come first for Madison, Mr. Johnson? When you missed her high school graduation? When you didn't attend her college graduation? When you cut off contact with her because she wouldn't give up her scholarship money? When exactly did you put Madison first? By the time Jennifer finished with him, my father looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. Then Davidson made the mistake of calling Sophia to testify. Sophia waddled to the witness stand, one hand supporting her back, playing up the pregnant victim role for all it was worth. She testified about how much she needed a stable home for her baby, how she couldn't afford Seattle rent on her own, and how hurt she was by my refusal to help. "Miss Johnson," Davidson said, "how did you feel when your sister refused to let you live in her house?" "Heartbroken," Sophia said, dabbing at her eyes. "Madison has always had everything come easy to her. Good grades, good job, nice house. I just wanted a safe place to raise my baby, and she said no without even thinking about it." Jennifer's cross-examination was devastating. "Miss Johnson, you testified that things came easy to your sister. Are you aware that Madison worked 30 hours per week throughout high school? She chose to do that. While you were receiving tutoring paid for by your parents, that's different. How is it different?" Sophia looked flustered. "Madison was always smarter than me. She didn't need help. But you did need help. Is that why you've lived with your parents for the past 3 years while your sister supported herself?" "I was figuring out my career path at age 25, and during this time of figuring out your career path, did you contribute financially to the household?" "I helped with chores." "That's not what I asked. Did you pay rent, buy groceries, contribute to utilities?" "No, but..." "And you're asking your sister, who has supported herself since age 18, to give you her house because you're now pregnant by a man who is no longer in the picture." It's not about asking, it's about family helping family. "When was the last time you helped Madison with anything?" Sophia stared at Jennifer, unable to answer. "I'll move on," Jennifer said smoothly. "Miss Johnson, are you aware that your sister has sent approximately $30,000 to your parents over the past 10 years to help with various family emergencies? Maybe some. And how much financial support have you provided to Madison during that same time period? Madison doesn't need help. That's not what I asked. The answer is 0, correct? You have never provided any financial, emotional, or practical support to your sister, but you believe she owes you her house. By the time Sophia left the stand, she was crying, but not the sympathetic kind of crying that garners sympathy from judges. It was the frustrated crying of someone who'd been exposed. Then it was my turn to testify. Jennifer led me through my childhood, my academic achievements, my career, and the purchase of my house. I spoke calmly and factually, letting the numbers tell the story. The judge listened intently as I described working multiple jobs, sending money home, and being excluded from family events unless they needed financial help. Davidson's cross-examination was aggressive, but I was ready for it. Ms. Chen, don't you think you have an obligation to help your pregnant sister? I offered to help her find an apartment and assist with rent until she got established. That's help. Giving someone your house is not help. It's giving up your life for someone else's convenience. But you have more than she does. I have more because I've worked for it since I was 16 years old. Sophia is 25. She's had the same opportunities I had to build a career and save money. Don't you love your family? I love my sister enough to offer genuine help that doesn't require me to sacrifice my security. I've learned that love shouldn't come with the price tag of giving up everything you've worked for. When I stepped down from the witness stand, I felt lighter than I had in years. But Jennifer wasn't done yet. Your Honour, she said, I'd like to present one additional piece of evidence that directly relates to this case. She walked to our table and picked up a thick manila folder. Through our investigation into this matter, we discovered something that the plaintiffs failed to disclose to their daughter. My parents both looked confused. Davidson was shuffling through his papers, clearly not knowing what was coming. In 2009, Martha and Robert Chen, the defendant's paternal grandparents, passed away and left a will. This will, filed with the probate court, left the bulk of their estate, approximately $800,000, to their granddaughter Madison Chen. The courtroom went dead silent. I watched the colour drain from my father's face. The defendant was never informed of this inheritance. The money was received by her parents and has never been distributed according to the terms of the will. Judge Morrison leaned forward. Counsellor, are you saying that the plaintiffs received money that was legally meant for the defendant and kept it for themselves? That's exactly what I'm saying, Your Honour, and I have the probate documents to prove it. Jennifer handed copies to the judge and to Davidson, whose face had gone white. My parents were whispering frantically to each other. Shh. Furthermore, Jennifer continued, this inheritance would have been more than enough to pay for Ms. Chen's college education, eliminating the need for her to work multiple jobs and take out loans. It would have given her the kind of financial head start that her parents instead provided exclusively to her sister. I was staring at my parents, watching them realise that their entire case had just collapsed. My mother looked like she was going to be sick. My father was gripping the edge of the table so hard his knuckles were white. Your Honour, Jennifer said, not only is the plaintiff's lawsuit frivolous, but they owe my client nearly $1 million in inheritance money plus 15 years of accumulated interest and penalties. Judge Morrison studied the probate documents for several long minutes. The silence in the courtroom was deafening. Finally, she looked up. Mr. Davidson, I'm going to give you 5 minutes to confer with your clients about whether they want to continue with this case, given what's just been presented. Davidson huddled with my parents. I could see them arguing in harsh whispers. My mother was crying again, but this time it wasn't for show. Sophia was staring at them from the gallery, her mouth open in shock. When the 5 minutes were up, Davidson stood slowly. Your Honour, my clients would like to withdraw their lawsuit. I thought they might, Judge Morrison said dryly. But before we conclude, I want to address something. Mrs. Johnson, Mr. Johnson, please stand. My parents stood on shaky legs. In 30 years on the bench, I have seen many family disputes. But I've rarely seen such a clear case of emotional and financial abuse disguised as a legal matter. You have filed a frivolous lawsuit attempting to force your daughter to give up her home to your other daughter. You have admitted to treating your daughters differently throughout their lives. And now we discover that you have withheld a substantial inheritance that legally belonged to the daughter you're now suing. My mother was sobbing openly now. This lawsuit is dismissed with prejudice. Furthermore, I'm ordering you to pay all court costs and the defendant's legal fees. And Mrs. Johnson, Mr. Johnson, I strongly suggest you retain new counsel to address the inheritance matter, because Ms. Chen would be well within her rights to pursue criminal charges for inheritance theft. As the judge's gavel came down, I felt something I'd never experienced before, complete vindication. The aftermath was chaos. My relatives in the gallery were buzzing with shocked whispers. Sophia was crying in her seat. My parents looked like they'd aged 10 years in the span of an hour. As we gathered our papers, my father approached our table. Madison, he said quietly, we need to talk. I looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time in years. He looked smaller somehow, defeated. Now you want to talk? I said. After you sued me? After I found out you stole my inheritance? We didn't steal anything. We were holding it for you. For 15 years. Without telling me. While I worked 3 jobs to pay for college and sent you money for emergencies? My mother joined him, her makeup streaked with tears. Madison, please, we're family. We can work this out. Family, I repeated. You sued your own daughter to try to steal her house, and now you want to talk about family? Jennifer gathered our things and gestured toward the exit. Madison, we should go. Let them contact us through proper channels if they want to discuss the inheritance. As we walked towards the courtroom doors, Sophia caught up with us. Madison, wait, she said, breathing heavily. I didn't know about the inheritance. I swear I didn't know. I stopped and turned to face her. Maybe you didn't, but you knew I worked my way through high school while you got tutors. You knew I paid my own way through college while they paid for your attempts. You knew I bought my own house while you lived rent-free with Mum and Dad. And you still thought I should give it all up for you. I need help. I'm scared about having this baby alone. For a moment I felt a flicker of the old Madison, the one who always tried to fix everything for everyone else. But then I remembered sitting in that courtroom, listening to my own family lie about me to a judge. Sophia, I offered to help you find an apartment and pay your rent for a few months. That was real help. Asking for my house wasn't asking for help. It was asking me to solve your problems by sacrificing my life. So that's it? You're just going to walk away from all of us? I looked back at my parents, who were standing by their table, looking lost and defeated. I thought about that 8-year-old girl with the dollar store colouring book and the teenager working 30 hours a week, and the young woman who sent money home to people who never once said thank you. I'm not walking away from anything, I said. I'm walking toward my own life for the first time. Over the next few weeks, the lawyers handled everything. My parents' attorney contacted Jennifer about settling the inheritance matter out of court. They offered to pay me $600,000, less than what they owed. But Jennifer advised taking it to avoid a lengthy legal battle. They'll have to sell their house to pay you, she told me during one of our meetings. Their retirement savings are tied up in that property. That's not my problem, I said, and I meant it. The day the settlement check arrived, I stared at it for a long time. $600,000 that should have changed my life 15 years ago. Money that could have paid for my education, given me a different start, made everything easier. But as I thought about it, I realised something. I was glad I hadn't had it then. If I'd grown up with that safety net, I might have become another Sophia. Someone who expected the world to provide for them. Instead, I'd learned to provide for myself. I'd learned that I was capable of more than I ever imagined. I used part of the money to pay off my mortgage completely. I invested the rest in a diversified portfolio that would secure my financial future. And for the first time in my life, I felt truly free. My parents tried to reconcile several times. Phone calls, emails, even showing up at my workplace once. The message was always the same. We're family, we need to stick together. They were sorry for their mistakes. But I was done being their emotional dumping ground and financial backup plan. The last conversation I had with my mother was 3 months after the trial. She called from a number I didn't recognise, so I answered without thinking. "Madison, honey, it's Mom. I've asked you not to contact me. Please, just listen. We had to sell the house. We're living in a small apartment now. Your father's health isn't good, and I'm working part-time at the grocery store. We need you." There it was, the same old song. We need you. Mum, you spent 28 years showing me that I wasn't part of this family unless I was useful to you. You sued me. You stole my inheritance. You chose Sophia over me every single time. And now that you need money, suddenly I'm your daughter again? It's not about money, it's about family. No, it's always been about money. When I had nothing to offer, you had nothing to say to me. When I could pay for Sophia's emergencies, suddenly you remembered my phone number. When you thought you could take my house, you dragged me to court. Family was never the priority. I was just the ATM. Madison, please. We're sorry. We made mistakes, but we love you. I don't think you do, I said, and the words came out calmer than I expected. I think you love what I can do for you, but you don't love me. You never learned who I actually am because you were too busy deciding who you needed me to be. That's not true. When's my birthday, Mom? A long pause. You don't know, do you, your own daughter's birthday, but I bet you know Sophia's. I bet you know what size clothes she wears and what her favourite food is and what makes her laugh. You know those things because you paid attention to her. You never paid attention to me. Madison, I'm not angry anymore, I said, and I realised it was true. I'm not hurt. I'm just done. I'm 30 years old and I finally understand that I don't need your approval or your love to be happy. I wish things had been different, but they weren't, and I can't keep pretending they were. I hung up and blocked that number too. 6 months later, I got word through a mutual acquaintance that Sophia had given birth to a healthy baby boy. She was living in a subsidised apartment and working part-time while my parents helped with childcare. It wasn't the life she'd envisioned, but it was a life she was building for herself. I felt nothing about the news, no anger, no sadness, no curiosity about my nephew. They had become strangers to me, and that felt exactly right. Jennifer and I had become friends during the legal process, and she invited me to her family's 4th of July barbecue that year. I watched her interact with her teenage daughters, really listening when they talked, celebrating their achievements, supporting them through their struggles, and I realised what I'd missed. But I also realised what I'd gained. I'd learned to stand up for myself. I'd learned that my worth wasn't determined by how useful I was to other people. I'd learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away from people who don't know how to love you back. That night, sitting on my back deck looking at the garden I'd planted and tended myself, I thought about that scared young woman who used to send money home, hoping it would buy her a place in her family's hearts. She'd finally learned something crucial. You can't purchase love, and you shouldn't have to. I thought about the 8-year-old with the dollar store colouring book, and I wished I could tell her that someday she would have a whole house full of things she chose for herself. That someday she would understand that being overlooked by people who don't see your value isn't a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of their limitations. For the first time in my life, I felt genuinely at peace. Not because my family had finally acknowledged what they'd done to me, but because I no longer needed them to. I'd acknowledged it myself, and that was enough. Have you ever felt like you weren't truly part of your own family? Like you existed on the periphery of their lives, valued only for what you could provide? I spent 30 years believing that if I just gave enough, sacrificed enough, proved myself enough, I would finally earn my place at their table. What I learned is that love shouldn't require you to earn it. Real families don't sue each other over houses. Real parents don't steal their children's inheritances. Real siblings don't demand you give up your security for their comfort. Sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is stop trying to fix relationships that were broken from the beginning. Sometimes walking away isn't giving up. It's finally choosing yourself. If you're living this story right now, if you're the family scapegoat or the one who always gives more than you receive, please know this: you deserve better. You deserve to be valued for who you are, not what you can provide. And you deserve the peace that comes from building a life that truly belongs to you. Don't forget to subscribe if this story resonated with you. Sometimes sharing our truth is the first step toward healing. And remember, You're worth more than their opinion of you, even if they'll never see it.